Hello, Instagram. My name is Ariel Sedan. I am an executive coach and the founder of Revel Awe. It's great to be here for our monthly live. And as a reminder, we are a coaching company focused on helping young and mid-level professionals really live into their leadership potential through executive coaching, capability development, confidence building, and really helping you discover the value that you bring to your career. And if you don't know what that is yet, we can also help you find it. Today, we have an amazing guest, a good friend of mine, Mike Mascarenhas. He is an awesome career coach and he has a lot of experience. I'm really excited to bring him on so that you guys can learn from him. Let's see if I can get him to join. Mike, if you are watching, can you click request to join on your Instagram? There you are. Okay. Technology, guys. In the meantime, oh, here he is. Hey, Mike.
Sorry, I am clearly very bad with technology, and I was just in the waiting room or something like that, but now I am here.
That's totally cool. Instagram as a platform is constantly something that I'm learning to reckon with. But it's really nice to have you on because we've known each other for 4 years now. We met at IESE Business School in Barcelona, where I was an exchange student and you were a full-time student. Happens to be one of the nicest people I probably ever met in my life. But how about you just briefly introduce yourself and tell people who are watching now, who are watching later, who you are.
Great, yeah, thanks. So yeah, as you mentioned, my name is Mike. I am originally from upstate New York. I grew up right on the Appalachian Trail, so a nice rural upbringing. I ended up going to college in New York as well at Cornell University. And then eventually I found my way to consulting in New York City at PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I really discovered kind of the first taste of business life for me. What I found at PwC was that I really enjoyed the client service work. I liked working with different types of people, but I really did not like working for banks. Maybe there was a little bit of an ethical thing there, or I just didn't love the type of people I was around always. And so I did my MBA. I moved abroad to Barcelona, Spain at IESE, kind of in search of something I didn't know what I was looking for. I definitely spent those 2 years in the MBA trying to figure out what exactly I would do with my career. And eventually I actually discovered career coaching. What's great about it is I kind of retain that client service feel. So I still work with individual clients, but rather than just throwing numbers at a bank where I can't feel like I have any impact at all, I actually can see the impact of what I do watching people grow. So that's kind of a little bit about my journey. I've been a career coach for now 3.5 years, and I'm excited to talk with you today.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that, you know, as a recovered consultant also, I definitely identify with the visibility of the impact that you have as a coach. So that really hits home for me too. For anybody who's interested in consulting, who might be watching, it's a great job. You learn a lot. And sometimes it has a recovery period afterwards, which, you know, is understandable.
I loved my time in consulting. I think it taught me a lot of methodologies in terms of how I even think in my day-to-day life today, but yeah, I don't miss it.
Yeah, same. So today we're going to be talking a bit about job searching, which these days I'm sure you get a ton of questions about. I get a lot of questions about job searching during a pandemic. Some people are looking for a job who are currently not working, whether they're looking for their first job or they've been laid off or left a job pre-COVID and are still looking, or people who have been working and are totally fine, but kind of want to use this opportunity to, grab the bull by the horns and look for something that they're more passionate about.
Sure, yeah.
But pandemic job searching has proven to be a new game. So hopefully today we'll be able to give some good pointers on how to do that.
I hope so.
How are we going to split up the structure so people know what they're walking into?
So I think that what we can do is we can kind of divide this into two pieces. We can talk about research and networking, so kind of uncovering leads, learning about what might be out there. And then the second phase being kind of applying and interviewing, which is a little bit more tactile. I know what I want, but I'm trying to figure out what to do with it, more or less.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Before we go into researching and applying, are there any trends that you've been seeing with hiring that people should be aware of? I don't work on that side, so I don't know what's going on out there.
Yeah. So first of all, companies are still hiring. I talk to a lot of students and young people that for some reason feel that the entire world is shut down. The world is not moving. Therefore, nothing has changed. And that's just not the case. Many companies from entry level all the way up to much more, mid and senior level jobs, they're all recruiting. The job market doesn't stop because we're in a global pandemic. It slows down without a doubt. But depending especially on the type of industry that you're looking at, there will still be opportunities out there for you. That being said, there's new opportunities or new methodologies as well. Remote work has grown significantly. We're seeing a lot of offers go out from companies around the world working for jobs that are actually remote. A lot of American companies allowing people to kind of work abroad and support them full time, which is not something American companies have been known to do very much previously.
That's cool.
Man, you could live in Barcelona and work on a New York City salary. Wouldn't that be the dream?
That would be the dream. Maybe I should reconsider what I'm doing with my life. Just kidding. I love what I do. Okay, cool. So given that, let's dive in. Researching and applying.
Networking, yeah.
And yes, researching and networking. Thank you for correcting me. One of the biggest challenges I think that the pandemic has brought about is a lack of having those same types of company presentations if you're at school, or networking events if you're out in the working world and you want to just go meet people and shake some hands and learn what people are doing. How do you compensate for that given the current environment? Where do you even start?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, researching doesn't necessarily have to be something that you do in a job hunt with other people. Now, of course, doing things like informational interviewing and finding the right people to speak to on something like LinkedIn can be very valuable. But you can begin researching what you're looking for as a next step in your career without actually needing that one-on-one interpersonal connection. To go back to the consulting firms that we love talking about, one thing that they're really great at is publishing industry reports. So for instance, if you are interested in, say, figuring out how much impact COVID has had on the automobile industry, there are consultancies that are writing those reports and publishing them for free right now. So arming yourself with information before you get out to the job hunt can be incredibly valuable, both to make you, more knowledgeable about the industry you might be trying to target, but also allow you to kind of fine tune your approach because, maybe you're really interested in tourism and hospitality. Intuitively, that's probably not the industry you're going to want to try to break into right now. So I definitely think that you start by just figuring out what content you can consume before going out to the market. The next thing is obviously LinkedIn. I think a lot of people think that LinkedIn is best utilized as a networking tool. But in my opinion, LinkedIn's almost even better as a researching tool. Mm-hmm. There are complex searches that you can put together to look at what people previously did, filter based on universities, filter based on previous employers and things like that that are going to be a little bit more complex than just saying, who works at Google, who can I talk to? Ultimately, then, I think where people are struggling on the networking side of things is that they don't feel like people are responding to them. And if you think about it, people aren't looking for jobs as much right now. And when you're not looking for a job, many people will not log on to LinkedIn. So as a result, my suggestion right now is to really try to utilize LinkedIn as a comprehensive research tool, but then to focus on finding second degree connection introductions, or even guessing people's email addresses, which you can Google the email formats quite easily, and trying to go a little bit more direct to the source than you might in a typical non-pandemic world.
You know, one of the things that I've been seeing a lot on LinkedIn is people using it as a really good storytelling platform, similar probably to what Facebook might have been a long time ago, but really in a way that enables them to create more connection with people. And one thing that, you know, I think a lot of people have been told in the past is, you know, find someone that you really admire and like see what they did with their career. How did they achieve their path? What steps did they take in their lifetime? And in the past, you know, you might read their biography if they were, you know, famous, or, you know, see if you can find their website and read about their bio. And now we have LinkedIn, which creates such a more accessible way to do that. And they don't need to be, you know, world famous CEOs or actors and actresses or athletes. They could just be someone who, you know, went to art school and then became a coder, right? There's these sort of atypical trajectories that are now more accessible through LinkedIn. And one of the things that I think is sort of an underutilized or maybe not as popular tool usage of LinkedIn is really being able to like understand other people's trajectories and recognizing where you can find similarities or find aspirations or get ideas, even if it's not necessarily company based or job based, but even just industry pivots that other people have taken, and finding those abilities to connect with people on that level.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that's even a little bit more of a research tool as well. For instance, let's say you want to break into product development. It's one of these classic functions that a lot of people are interested in and not a lot of people know how to actually get the jobs. And let's say your background is a little bit more soft skills. So you're not a coder, but you also understand that there are some product development jobs out there that don't require coding skills. Then what you could do is go into companies and look to see if their product developers all have coding experience, or if they're more interested in hiring more soft skills backgrounds. That's going to save you time from applying to the wrong companies. It's going to save you time from networking with people who can't help you as much. So trying to find those commonalities in story is certainly something that's valuable. And I definitely like what you say about telling the story on LinkedIn. I think you can have a great LinkedIn summary, which is nice. But I think LinkedIn can even be more powerful in terms of how you interact, commenting on posts, curating a feed that is going to signal to the market what you're interested in. These types of strategies tell a story, but maybe a little bit more implicitly than simply just having a biography that's nice.
Yeah, totally. So I guess the researching, you know, part of what I often tell my clients to think about when they're thinking about looking for a new job is to think about what kind of vibe do they want in the company? What kind of company does it actually, what does the company look like? How big is it? Is it geographically based? You know, hierarchical versus flat structure? How do you really get a good idea in actuality to put those kinds of preferences into practice? I mean, LinkedIn obviously has these great filters, but how do you translate the preferences into the actual searching?
LinkedIn is excellent for hard skill, or like filtering based on hard skills or hard attributes, right? I want to work in banking. I can find investment banks on LinkedIn very easily.
Yeah.
I think you're alluding to one of the challenges in the job hunt, which is really trying to dissect a company's culture when everybody's going to say we're incredibly collaborative and we're big leaders and we communicate and everybody is great. Everyone's going to say that because of course you do. If you're trying to represent your company, you want to use the same adjectives that everybody uses. I think that there are some indications that you can use on LinkedIn without just talking to people. The best way is talking to people. The way a company represents itself on a company page, I think can be quite interesting. And then most startups that are backed by some sort of money, and certainly all private companies, publish annual reports where there'll be letters from the CEO, and they tend to be very, very soft skill in nature. Reading what the CEO's vision of the company is going to be a little bit more difficult for the marketing team of that company to massage into this collaborative approach. I've read a lot of CEO reports that make it very clear that this is someone that is direct and aggressive, and the culture at the top of a company is always going to melt down throughout however many hierarchical ranks there are. But this is even more true for startup recruiters. If you're interested in breaking into smaller companies in the startup scene, understanding who the founders are as people is going to save you a lot of time when trying to figure out if that company culture is going to be a fit for you.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And I don't know how much emphasis is placed on doing that kind of research. So that's an awesome point that I really appreciate, because I have not thought about that in a very long time, probably since I was in college and job searching for the first time.
I think what ends up happening with most people in a job hunt, especially in a pandemic, is they reach out to headhunters that have reached out to them. They apply to lots of jobs on LinkedIn, get rejected, get upset that they get rejected. So they reach out to more headhunters and apply to more jobs on LinkedIn, get more upset. It's this vicious circle of just applying online and not trying to break that cycle. And if you do good research and you try to find a place that you're interested in, but also one that you think you fit the company culture, you could send out one application. People tend to have a really big top of their job filter rather than focusing on cutting some of those pieces of that top filter to increase the middle of the filter later on.
You know, it's kind of like, I think about people who are applying to colleges, and my sister-in-law has an education company where, you know, she helps students prepare for their college applications. And seeing that process, even when we were applying, I don't know how many schools you applied to. I know people who applied to maybe 5 schools. I applied to 22 schools, which was at the time pretty outrageous, but I don't think that far-fetched anymore. But what ends up happening is you have to be really clear about what you're looking for, and you know what your criteria are when you're applying for college or when you're applying for business school. You know what kind of size you want, you know what kind of emphasis. If you want to study engineering, you have to choose a school that has a good engineering school. It's clear, and you don't pick 500 schools. You don't pick 500 jobs to apply to. You really focus.
So Ariel, I'm going to challenge you on something you just said there. And I actually don't think a lot of people invest time in understanding what they want. I think a lot of people end up taking things like college rankings in this instance, applying to the top colleges or top MBA programs and going to the one they get the highest ranked program they get into. And I think it's kind of similar with the job hunt. When you think back to your college career and why you took that first job, did you really, really investigate all of the opportunities available to you and then apply to the ones that you felt you fit best? Because I didn't. I applied to a bunch of jobs on a job board, and then I took the first job I got. And
yes, that sounds
I have to tell you,
yes.
I work with MBAs. That's what the MBAs do. I work with post-MBAs. That's what people do post-MBA. People are very reactive in the job hunt. And this first filter is all about being a little bit more proactive in understanding what you're looking for, both hard and soft skills, to save yourself some time and energy. But the inclination is it's the fear of missing out. Oh, by not sending an application out to every single job that I can think of, I might be missing out on something. This is what happens often, especially in times where there's not as many opportunities in the market and people are scared about what might come for them.
Yeah. Oh, you know, it's so, um, I've been doing this for a few years and I've never really thought about it from a reactive, proactive perspective, which is so true and infuriating because, you know, as coaches, our goal is to really help our clients understand what do you really want and then how can you make a plan to make that happen, which
Yeah,
is obviously proactive. But
absolutely.
the job search, I think oftentimes people come at it from such a place of maybe desperation is too strong a word, but there's a place of fear, I think, that you're not I don't know, maybe you have a better word for it, but you know, there's this need to get the best job.
Yeah.
And then the question is, okay, what does it mean to get the best job? And that's sort of the distinction, I think, is what other people tell you might be the best job versus what you might tell yourself is the best job. What do you think?
So, so the first thing I'll say is almost everyone only is ever looking for a job when something isn't right in their current situation.
Hmm.
So job hunting almost always comes from a point of desperation because people that are not desperate are not looking for what's next. And quite frankly, probably they should a little bit more. Um, at the same time, I think that this is why our industry exists. This is why coaching and counseling is something that I think should take off and become much more valuable over time because it's not just an art. People think that decision making is simply an art. It's, oh yeah, I know how to make decisions. I learned that. You know, you take a dartboard, throw a dart at it.
Or make a
There are
very well thought out decision tree, which
there
always
are
works.
there are elements of art to the job hunt, and there are elements of science.
Yeah.
And a coach or a counselor or an advisor can help you try to blend those because what happens is people just think that some people think it's just a science. They make a decision tree, they do it. Some people think it's just an art, apply to whatever they want, and whatever comes, comes. In reality, it's a blend, and navigating that, if you're not well trained, it's a challenge. And we don't train people for this. We should. We should be. My job shouldn't exist. We should have comprehensive training for this. You know, starting at a young age. How do you critically think and make choices in a professional career? We don't. And if the more people that recognize that, I think that's the first step, right? The first step is understanding that, oh, yeah, it would be a lot better if I was able to be more proactive in my choices professionally. And then you can seek help in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I agree 1,000,000%. We'll add it to the list of things they should have taught us in high school, along with, you know, how to balance a
Financial
checkbook.
literacy. Yeah,
Yeah.
financial literacy. Man, we learned circle geometry, like sine, cosine,
Yes.
tangent, arcs. Like knock out like 10% of that and teach us about money. Be good.
Yeah. It could have been helpful. Um, but all of that, you know, all of that really, I think gives us a space to, um, you know, better late than never help teach our clients
Absolutely.
how to navigate these things more proactively. And that includes
Absolutely.
figuring out the job that you want, but also figuring out how to be proactive in that search. So step one is, okay, doing the research externally about the companies, the jobs, the roles that are interesting to you. But also, I would say doing the research internally and really being introspective and understanding, okay, what are my strengths? What are the things that I want to work on? What are the development goals that I want this job to help me achieve? What kind of environment am I most successful in? Some of these answers you might already know, and some of them you might not. But I think the more that you can answer for yourself, the easier it will be to find those roles that fit what you're looking for, really.
Totally.
And then the question is, okay, so you've done the external research, you've done the internal research, hopefully, and if you need help with that, obviously reach out to Mike or to me. This is sort of like our bread and butter. And And then you start networking and on talking to people, doing those informational interviews, reaching out on LinkedIn, figuring out what their email addresses could be and trying to reach out.
Sure.
Finding those common links that you can really leverage in order to build connection with those people proactively, whether it's, previously having worked at the same firm or being alumni from undergrad or from graduate school, even being from the same town, whatever, or reading
Absolutely.
an article about them. Oh, I read that article in Harper's Bazaar about your startup and I wanted to talk to you. I don't know where Harper's Bazaar just came from. Is that still around? Anyway.
I have no idea.
But finding those points that you can leverage and seeing how those networking links can either help add fuel to your search or maybe even lead into a referral for a potential role, right? Then what? What's the next step? Then it's applying and interviewing, right?
Yeah.
By the way, you're really dark on Instagram.
I know. What just happened? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't really know why.
You're allowed to move also, by the way. We're patient.
Better now?
That's a little better. Yes, that's
better now, yeah?
Yes. So applying and interviewing.
Yeah, so yeah. As far as applying and interviewing goes, there's definitely some things that you can be thinking about now, especially given COVID. Like I mentioned before, try to avoid this mass application top of the filter strategy, just because, especially now when every job is going to be incredibly competitive, putting yourself out there that many times yields very few results, but also can really stifle your resiliency. As much as you could say that you're immune to getting rejections and that doesn't affect you at all, it does. And if you're applying to jobs that have 10,000 applications that you don't have the qualifications for just to see what happens, that maybe doesn't actually add value to your mental state, especially if you're in a job hunt that's a little bit more aggressive. The other factor, interviewing, what happens in these more competitive markets is processes move faster. Consequently, you need to be preparing for interviews before you have an interview. And I think what people think is that, well, I need to just get interviews first and then I'll be able to really dive deep into my preparation. That's not how it works. If you do that, you might get called up by a company that you'd love to work for an interview the next day. And interview skills, especially the sort of storytelling that you need to learn, it's not always intuitive. And that's why it's very, very important to be doing some interview prep kind of concurrently to the rest of your job hunt, especially now.
I think that's so important, predominantly because I think, and maybe this is just my perception, but I think because the last million months have felt like there's no, like the concept of time is just totally not a thing anymore. I think a lot of people feel like they have a lot of time, and that they'll have time when the thing comes up. And so when the interview will maybe come up, then they'll have the time to prepare. But that same idea of being proactive and doing the preparation up front is still going to be really relevant here. And the other thing that I'll add in is that interviewing and the stories that you tell, I think this is also something that people tend to forget. They're stories that you already know. It's just a question of writing them and telling them in a way that conveys the message that answers the question, right? Like these are experiences that you've had.
I think that also gets at one of the typical pitfalls in interviewing, and that's overconfidence in your own stories. Interviewing is absolutely the stories that you're telling, already. However, the person that you're interviewing with does not know them. And being able to train in a way that you can articulate your experiences so that someone that's never met you before understands what you did is very important. It's particularly important when your background is something that's a little bit more technical. This is a common pitfall with, say, engineers who are looking to transfer into business, or very technical designers or coders that are looking to move into a more soft skills area. Even if you're an engineer looking to move engineering firms, your first round interview might not be with an engineer. So thinking that I know myself, I know my stories, it's totally fine, I'll be able to do it. That's bad strategy. And it's not something that takes a long time. It's kind of like, it's going to the gym. You know, it's something that if you don't have to go for 4 hours a day, but if you go for 30 minutes, a few days a week, you'll see a very real change.
Yeah. And I think the other facet that really I find so interesting about a lot of people's, let's call it unprepared interview strategies, is that they oftentimes, what I find is that a lot of people think that when they go into the interview, it'll come to them. Like they're both simultaneously very nervous sometimes, and they think that, oh, when I'm in the conversation, like things will just flow.
I mean,
and
pardon my French, it's bullshitting, right? Some people really think they're good at BSing, and some people are. I think consulting taught us well for that, right? I actually like consulting. I teach people how to go into consulting, by the way. But people have confidence that their BS abilities will get them through. And I work with a lot of internationals. So I work with a lot of Americans and people from all around the world that are looking to break into a new country. And one thing I find that us in the US really do a lot is we rely on our native English capabilities to out-talk at someone. So because you and I are native English speakers, we can just talk and talk and talk and talk in an interview. But that interviewer who speaks much worse English than us also just realizes, oh, this person's saying nothing. Non-native speakers can be even a little bit more adept at smelling the sort of American classic BSing in interviews. And it's just important to be aware of.
yes, and I'm sure you've also noticed this. I mean, you work right now at a place in Spain. I've worked for a German company before, and we've both worked with folks from all over the world, both as clients and as colleagues and as friends. And I think that the BS meter for non-native English speakers is so much more sensitive, that it's actually a really great lesson for native English speakers, especially Americans, I would say, because we like talking. And I would say that, you know, I'm a verbal processor. I think you're a bit of a verbal processor. Absolutely. Also. And a lot of Americans that I know are verbal processors. And so we tend to think that, like, oh, we can just talk out loud and the answer will come as I'm speaking. But what I think is more constructive and probably will be more successful when preparing for your interviews is having a few key stories that you can convey really eloquently that can apply to many different scenarios, so you can adapt to the question. Absolutely. You know, the same problem might address a question about, or the same scenario could address the same question about problem solving as it could teamwork, as it could leadership. It's just a matter of the flow of the story and what facts or what experiences you want to highlight in that same scenario. But I think oftentimes we try to fit in a lot more than is necessary.
I think if you have an interview coming up soon and you are fully unprepared, I think the best thing that you can do is try to develop a structured answer for tell me about yourself. It's the most common interview question asked. Iterations of it are always going to start any interview you're a part of. And what ends up happening is you just say exactly the demographics that they could read on your resume, rather than actually tell them who you really are. And first impressions in interviews are everything.
Yeah.
Most interviews are decided very, very quickly. They don't take 30 minutes to decide if they're hiring you or not. So that first interview question has an incredibly advanced importance compared to the rest of the other interview questions that you're given. So don't just say, hi, my name's Mike. I'm from upstate New York. I went to Cornell. I became a consultant. I work at IESE. Tell the interview who you are. Connect with them as a person. And you know what? If you tell them who you are and they don't like that, maybe it's not the right job for you.
What do you think are the most important things to highlight in the tell me about yourself answer? Because I think, especially in the places where your work experience or your educational experience is prized, sometimes it's hard to know, like, how much do you actually share? What's important or helpful to share?
So I think that you do have to hit those autobiographical elements. But rather than say, my name's Mike, I went from Cornell to PwC to IESE, tell me why. Why did I choose consulting from PwC? From Cornell? Why did I choose to leave PwC and go to IESE? So think about the whys behind the decisions you've made in your professional life, and then look for commonality to come up with a theme.
You know, that's so what I think is the thing that, like, in college, your essays in high school and college, and the conclusion, you're supposed to say, like, the so what. That's the crux of it all. Like, why is your story important? What is the theme? What are the threads that, you know, that really tie your life's tapestry together? It could be a love of international cultures. It could be, you know, your curiosity for development. It could be, you know, a million different things. And it's probably not as complicated or as scary to try and figure it out as you might think it is. Because sometimes we don't know why we make decisions.
And this goes back to being proactive versus reactive. I mean, I could tell you that I majored in business in college because I liked math and I came from humble beginnings and I wanted to make money. There was nothing else behind that decision. But then when I think about how I made my other decisions, I start looking at themes behind, well, maybe I'm not the best decision maker all the time. But that actually allows me opportunity for personal growth. And it's, so this is all kind of tied together. It's about being proactive and understanding who you are and what you want, and then representing it in an interview in a way that is honest, sometimes vulnerable, but still certainly remembering it's a sales activity.
Yeah. You know, really brief anecdote. When I left consulting, I went for one last interview before I decided that I wanted to go the entrepreneurship route and start my own company. And it was my best tell me about yourself answer, because I didn't necessarily even want to be there. I really admired the company. I loved what they did. I was like so connected, and I would have loved to work there if it was, you know, 3 years prior. And, you know, the interviewer asked, you know, tell me about yourself. And it was such a good answer. I wish I had it written down. I started talking about, you know, growing up in an immigrant family in a bicultural household, and how that started my fascination for cultural translation and for languages, and how I was really able to tie together my entire life trajectory, even things that I didn't think would tie in. You know, how does majoring in English in college relate at all to cultural translation? I'm an American studying English at an American institution, and even that I could tie together, deeper understanding and psychological factors and history, and there's so much there. And so what I would challenge you listeners to do is to find a general thread. And if you can do that, all the other decisions that might come into your about me answer, they'll find a way. There is a way to tie it all together, even if you don't necessarily realize it up front. So that's the challenge that I will pose.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, I mean, thinking about how all of this ties together and wrapping up, it's all about being a little bit more active in the choices that you're making in the job hunt. A little bit more active in the research that you're doing, a little bit more active in the networking rather than just going on LinkedIn, trying to guess email addresses. Even it might feel a little intimidating, but it works. And certainly a little bit more active in the storytelling that you're going to put forth. That's not an easy shift because for most of us, our career choices have been passive. It is just the fact of the matter that most of us chose a major in college when we were 18 that then impacted the rest of the jobs that we were going for after that. And we just kind of always kept pushing forward step by step. Breaking that cycle is incredibly difficult. But in times of crisis, it's actually a good time to try to make that happen because there aren't as many headhunters out there trying to grab you into something that you actually don't want to do. There aren't as many people actively recruiting. And as a consequence, that actually means that you need to be a little bit more active in the choices you're making. Otherwise, you might not be successful in the job hunt.
I would also argue that, you know, it gives you an opportunity to say no to things and to really consider what you don't want. Because sometimes knowing what you don't want is almost as, if not more important than knowing what you do want. So you don't end up falling into another passive decision and accepting something or going and spending the time and effort and energy applying to something that you're not actually excited about.
Yeah.
Am I back? Sorry, I got a phone call.
Yep, you're back.
It was
You're
spam.
back.
All of that's to say, being proactive, recognizing what you want, being able to say also what you don't want. But if we were to leave our viewers with one sort of big takeaway, is that it? Or is there, I mean, not it, but like, is that the message? Or do we want to add in some other extra fun takeaway?
So in this time, there's this kind of spiral downward in job hunts. And it's the apply to lots of things because that's what you're supposed to do. Get rejected because you applied to lots of really competitive things. Get upset because you got rejected a lot. And then because you're upset, continue to make mistakes in your job hunt, like applying to lots of things. Trying to break out of that spiral requires proactivity, but also a lot of resilience and quite frankly, self-control, because choosing not to apply to things, especially if they're really easy on LinkedIn, is difficult. So just understanding that job hunts right now, especially when it's difficult, can result in this, quite frankly, even depression for some people that are looking for a long time and trying to break out of that by making more active decisions. That's what I really think you should be left with here today. It's not easy, but if you don't know how to start, talk to people. And it can be to professionals like us, but it could also be to a family member or a friend. Just raise your hand and say that you need help in this, and people will come forth.
Yeah. And, people want to help. And if it's not, a coach, then people really love to give their advice. So that's sometimes helpful and sometimes not. So also knowing when to say no to advice is nice.
I think that if you have the financial resources to hire a career coach right now, it is an amazing time to do that, to develop professionally. I'm very well aware that not everyone will have those resources, but if you don't, there are also a lot of nonprofits that might be able to provide you with things like this as well. There are a lot of really smart people trying to help all different types of people solve career problems. And I just don't think everyone realizes that those resources exist.
Yes.
So make sure that if you think you need this support, go try to find it.
If people are interested in getting in touch with you specifically, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so my name here, Mike Mascar, it's Michael Mascarenhas, Mascarenhas. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a note and say that you saw this and you'd like to chat. I'm happy. I'm not going to try to charge you $20,000 for a quick career chat. I'm happy to help any way I can. So I definitely would suggest just reaching out.
Awesome. And Mike always has really amazing content on LinkedIn, so you should connect and follow him anyway, because he has just wonderful stuff, and he's also just really nice. And I'm so grateful that you joined us today and shared your 2 cents and your experience.
I'm really grateful for having me, and I really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll get to come on and do it again sometime.
Oh, totally. Whenever you want. In the meantime, for those of you watching live or who are watching the recording, connect with Mike. Feel free to reach out to us at Revel and Awe. Send us a DM on Instagram or email us at info@revelandawe.com. We're happy to connect you with Mike or to share any resources that we have. We're also offering a free discovery session. So if you're interested in learning more about career search or leadership search or whatever is currently on your plate, job searching can be really tough. Asking for help is super important, and we're here to do that for you. So feel free to reach out and have a great rest of your day.
Have a good evening, everybody.